Hello everyone. Okay, I'm just gonna wait for people to join. Okay, we have people joining. Hello everyone. Great. Hi, this is Naini Thakur, and welcome to Mind Matters, an Insta Live series where every Thursday we're going to be discussing about various aspects of mental health, and how it affects people across different walks of life, from children to young adults and homemakers as well as sports people. Today we have a very, very exciting guest joining us. As most of you already know, I'm just going to wait for a few of you to join before I add her. It is Navya Nanda. She's also the co-founder of Aara Health, a women's healthcare platform where they also run campaigns for mental health awareness. Navya is also the founder of Project Naveli, a non-profit initiative supporting gender equality in India. While the core of Project Naveli is education, healthcare, and financial independence, they also provide free mental health counseling services for women in rural India. Great. So I'm not going to wait any further, and I'm quickly going to add her to this session so we can start our conversation. Here she is. Okay. Hi, Navya. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you doing?
All well, all well. Thank you so much for joining and doing this with us. And thanks for being the first guest for our Mind Matters series.
No, of course. Thank you for having me. And I think it's
Of course,
an important conversation that, needs to be had. And I appreciate
definitely.
um, Forbes initiating that in such an open manner, and especially, inviting the youths to come and share their perspectives. So thank you.
Right, right, absolutely. So, you know, like you rightly mentioned, we're going to be talking about the impact of mental health with the youth. So, why don't we start the conversation with discussing why is the dialogue on mental health so important, especially for teenagers and young adults, in your opinion?
So, a conversation and dialogue on mental health is important for everyone, but more so for adolescents because I think this is the time to do the most work on ourselves and our mental health. We're just about building our foundations, our learning, and how we want to play a role in this world. And it's at this point that we do the most thinking. It's
Yeah.
also a time when our emotional intelligence is growing. So, a time when we are put into the formal education system where we rely heavily on our teachers and our administrators. And the first time, really, we seek approval from someone in our family. And I
Right.
remember when I was in school, I struggled with severe anxiety, and I don't think there was really conversation around mental health open or really an out or
Right.
guided. So I think that if mental health is not emphasized on at an adolescent stage, it's definitely something that we carry forward into our adult life, and it will foster and develop in many ways, many which can be possible. We won't have the tools we need to prepare ourselves for what life is going to throw at us, and I think that's why it's important, especially at this stage in our lives, to come forward and talk about these things openly so we can prepare ourselves better for the future in a mature and much more healthier manner.
Right, definitely. That's a great point that you've mentioned. In your opinion, what are some triggering issues when it comes to the youth in particular?
I think the lack of awareness around mental health itself is a triggering issue because imagine getting a cold or a fever and not knowing what it is and not knowing how to deal with it and what it can do.
Yeah.
To with the fever because we know exactly how to, that's not the logic that you could apply to something like health because we're just not equipped to understand it well. And that itself can be a very triggering issue for a lot of people. And something else, and I personally consider myself live in a very high competitive world, and I think our education system has prepared us to, go out there at the world, do our best. And sometimes that can become counterproductive because I see this happening with a lot of people in my family. They are very, very obsessed with achieving success in big level now. So at a very young age, already a state of burnout because we want to achieve everything we want to achieve. So when you aren't able to achieve something you intend.
Navya, sorry, I think there seems to be an issue with your connection. Of the your voice is cracking, and it's cracking a little more now. So,
Are you able to hear me now?
uh, can you say something now? Maybe let's check if it's not. No, I couldn't hear you at all. Oh man, the issues that come with technology.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better. Cool. We can go on.
Okay. So I was saying that, because we may not necessarily be able to achieve all these things in this particular moment, we inherently blame ourselves for not being for those failures and get a lot of self-doubt and discouragement amongst ourselves. But that
Okay, sorry, Navya, we've lost you again.
hi, better.
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay.
Cool. No worries. I think we can go on.
Okay.
Right. So, coming to my next question, which is essentially about kids and college going students, especially. So, kids were kind of stuck at home, and college kids who just kind of graduated. There were no jobs in the market. And it's like insane amount of pressure that one has to go through, when you're stuck in a situation like this at such a young age. So, in your opinion, how can students deal with a situation like this?
I think the pandemic was unfortunately was the education. I did not therapy. I my last semester of college and online. But I think something that a lot of students um that it's difficult and study of all these, but we also have an opportunity to do a lot of self learning, a lot more formal learning. Yeah.
Um, Sorry, Navya, we've lost you again. Do you want to change place or maybe join again or something? Or is there something wrong with the microphone?
I can hear you better. Are you able to see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. So I would say also that education has a different meaning now. Employers
Yeah.
are going to understand that learning has had to stop in a more traditional setting, and people have had to adopt to this work from home and online way of life. And I also feel that the job market today is very different. I don't think a degree itself is enough to get you a job. And employers are now looking for more than just technical skills. They're looking for things like emotional intelligence, critical thinking, problem solving, and these are skills that our education system hasn't inherently taught us. And in fact, the problem isn't unemployment; it's unemployability. And these are times during the pandemic that especially students sitting at home have had an opportunity to learn these skills. We've unknowingly been having to deal with a lot of hardship in such a short space of time that developing these skills will automatically make us more attractive in the job market, especially in the 21st century workplace. So I would say to students that using this time to really grow yourself, because these are skills that you would need in the future, and these are actually skills that employers are looking for and would make you definitely more attractive as a hire.
Yeah, definitely. That's very well said. And for you, you took such a major risk by setting up, a company in the midst of a pandemic. What was it like for a young entrepreneur like you? And what kind of challenges did you guys face, and mentally, what kind of pressures did you guys have?
So I think I definitely had a very unique founding story because I actually met my co-founders virtually on Zoom before I ever met them in person. So that was definitely an exciting thing, but of course, it's very uncertain when set out to start a business in the middle of a global pandemic. There are a lot of things that don't go your way.
Yeah.
We as a company at Aara also faced a lot of these difficulties, with our supply chain, our operations, not being able to meet one another. So I think mentally that does definitely take a toll in terms of you not being in a traditional workplace setting and having to, run your business the way you'd hope. A lot of businesses also saw sales going down and them not being
Yeah.
able to make the kind of profits they expected. And that definitely makes you feel, definitely down because you obviously want your business to succeed and do well. And once again, then you blame maybe inherently yourself for some of these failures. But I think also a positive that came out of this is that I think the pandemic has allowed a lot of companies, and I've seen that a lot of new companies that started out during the pandemic have been more socially conscious. And, that's probably because of seeing the effects of this
Yeah.
pandemic in our world. And Aara as well, we saw what the pandemic did to, the women's healthcare system in India. So I think that this inherently will set a trend for, the future of business where a lot more companies are trying to solve social problems rather than, seeking larger profits or top lines. And I think setting this trend, and I feel that a lot of more companies need to get with this agenda of making them all more equitable, more sustainable, and actually creating solutions and products that are doing something for society. Not just about chasing profits. So I think that that would definitely be something that I took away from this experience of, being
Yeah.
starting off as an entrepreneur in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah, quite literally. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And talking about, taking such a risk in dealing with work pressures, what are some of the issues that the youth faces, especially when it comes to burnout and competition in the work life? And I think, when it comes to work from home, I think all of us are just sick of just being stuck at home, right? So, how do you deal with that, and what are some issues?
So I think understanding that, like I mentioned earlier, we are in a very, very hyper competitive world where everyone is performing at their highest level. And I
Yeah.
think that has a lot to do with the fact that we are really busy chasing goals and trying to achieve things. And we
Yeah.
often miss the process of simply getting to that goal. And one of my favorite quotes actually is from this book called Atomic Habits, and something that I personally live by is that if unsuccessful and successful people have the same goals, then it's not the goal that differentiates a winner from a loser, because it's the process. So I think especially when it comes to burnout, I've realized that setting goals is of course important, but dealing with how you will get there, not just in terms of the process, but your mindset, how you're going to handle emotions and people along the way, is equally important. And I think we don't give so much attention to that process. We're more fixated on achieving the goals in the short term that we really compromise our health in the process. So I would say that, I believe personally, like mentally as well, for your health, it's unrealistic to expect yourself to be 100% every single day. We're human beings and we cannot perform at that level every single day. We're not built to. And I think even if you increase by 1% every single day, in the long term, that is a much more healthier and sustainable way to
Yeah.
achieve, whatever it is you set out to achieve. So I would probably say that that is the attitude that I've taken in terms of trying to manage work-life balance and prevent burnout.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I feel like everyone, most young adults are stuck in this rat race, and like you rightly said, sometimes you need to remind yourself that there's no point, and what's the point to all of that, right? Right. Taking the conversation of mental health forward, talking about the infrastructure. I mean, it's a known fact that we don't have the best of infrastructure, especially in India. So, can you tell us a little about what is the current situation like and what more needs to be done?
I mean, I think the current situation, given the pandemic, has worsened. But to share a couple of facts, I think India is the world's most depressed country, with almost every sixth Indian suffering from a mental illness. And actually, techno stress is a large part of mental illnesses now, because we've seen almost 50% of teens spend more than 5 hours online a day. And we see in itself, the kind of effects that social media can have on our mental health.
Yeah.
And I think in India, we have less than 5,000 mental health professionals, which is a very, very low figure for the population that we have. So that goes to show that we definitely do need to invest in our, mental health infrastructure, especially after the pandemic and, having to deal with lockdowns and loss and grief, and just a complete collapse of our healthcare system is definitely something we had to struggle with. But I also think that apart from just a simple investment in infrastructure, we need a more bottom up approach. And, I say this because, if you take America, for example, the human to psychiatric ratio there is very high, but there's still a very large burden of, mental health illnesses. So the solution isn't as straightforward as just increasing facilities. I think there's something that needs to be done from a more bottom up approach, starting on a community level. We need to emphasize the importance of mental health in schools, at home, and at a local level, to really encourage and foster those conversations, for then it to be trickled up to a larger scale solution.
Right, absolutely. And like you said, you guys are doing that with Project Naveli, where you're working with women in rural India and helping them with, free mental health counseling. So, in this process, I mean, of course, you would have come across a lot of case studies, but would you say that does mental health continue to be a taboo even now? And can you tell us, some of the issues that women there deal with?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it still is a taboo, not just in rural areas, but in urban cities as well. And to give you an example of, a case that we dealt with through Project Naveli in a rural village in Gadchiroli, Maharashtra, where they banished women due to menstruation outside their villages. Now, you can only imagine the kind of trauma and mental health impact that would have on somebody, sent out of their home into an open field, no roof over their head, or so when we were interacting with women, they were definitely feeling a lot of they were angry first, and second, they were ashamed of themselves and their bodies. And I think that itself created a huge mental health trauma for them. So, and I'm a personal believer in, that your physical environment has a great impact on your mental health. And for that reason, the solution that we took was to build them positive homes. So it was more so that, we know that we can't change things overnight, especially when it comes to mindsets and beliefs. So we built these homes where they felt automatically more valued, more special. We wanted them to feel that this was something for them, and that, I think, automatically, once the physical environment improved, their mental health improved along with that as well. And now they're actually using this time to take care of themselves and self-reflect. And I think a lot of people also stem up with a lot of mental health issues because they're not able to develop a positive relationship with themselves. And what better way to do that than to create an environment where you can have that, interact with one another, and find a support network. So that's essentially what we did through this project, in Gadchiroli.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Great. I think that's a lovely note to end my bit of questions. Now, I think we can take a couple of questions from the audience that we got yesterday. So the first question was how to not let social media affect mental health. I mean, I think that's a very, very important question, and we must address it.
And I think, like, the first thing to understand about social media is that no one's talking about the hardships that they're facing.
Yeah.
Don't think that your worth depends on what you're posting. And especially at a time like this, when social media has really gone up, I think it's okay to set boundaries. Like, on social media, especially, people do a lot of seeming rather than doing being. And I think that being and doing is so much more important than just coming across as, people put their best foot forward, and sometimes they're faking that best foot forward. So a lot of what you see isn't in eventuality the reality of somebody. I
Yeah.
think, why are people so scared to set boundaries for themselves? Social media is a hyper individualized experience that you can control what you're saying. So I would say to help you not take this negative for your mental health, it's important to create a consumption diet that inspires you, not one that makes you feel worse or creates self doubt or low self
Yeah.
esteem. I mean, we have control to unfollow, we have control to
Yeah.
choose to see who we want. So I think creating a healthier environment for yourself, because it's literally in your hands, so you can do what you
Yeah.
want with it.
Quite literally. And there's a lovely question that someone asked, and I think it's a very important one, which is someone said that discussing mental health is still a taboo in my family. How should I tell my parents that I need help?
So, I mean, I've always believed that change begins at home, whatever that may be. And, we can't break taboos and stigmas until we don't speak. And I know that's easier said than done. But how I would approach this is probably, in a couple of steps. I would definitely pick a moment that is not as serious and intense, because you don't want it to come across as a very difficult conversation. It should be something that can be had on the dining table. That you can just openly say that, I've not really been feeling my best self, and have you noticed that? And I, wanted to share that with you. And I think it's important to also not get caught up in analyzing or explaining why you may be feeling that way. I think just simply saying that I want to see somebody who could help me, and I want to learn more about what I can do to make myself feel better, is a great way to kind of initiate that conversation. And also, I think, sometimes when you are explaining how you feel mentally, a lot of times you're not met with belief. Sometimes you're not validated for how you're feeling. And it's important that, obviously everybody gets nervous to bring up these things, but as long as you're communicating to your family that it is making you unhappy on a day-to-day basis and keeping you from doing things that you want to do, it's important to make that communication. And something that may also make it easier is going to another adult you trust, maybe, an aunt or an uncle or somebody who your parents know, to help you through having that conversation if you're finding it difficult to have individually by yourself.
Right. That's a very good approach that you mentioned, and I hope the person who asked this question is
Yeah.
watching this and it helps him or her. All right, great. I think this is a great way to end this beautiful conversation that we've had. Navya, thanks again. It was a super insightful conversation, and thank you everyone who tuned in. We'll be back next Tuesday with another episode of Mind Matters. Thank you all so very much. Thanks, Navya.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye bye.